Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast. My name is Barbara Thompson. Each week, I'll be bringing you a self-care expert or a message to help you to discover how to live your best life and understand your mind-body connection. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now, let the Studio Chat begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Studio Chat podcast. Today, I have Lisa Higgins with me. She is a period coach, the founder of the Red Rebel Collective. She helps women with severe PMS treat their symptoms naturally. And if you're anything like me, I didn't know a period coach existed. I really wanted Lisa to be on my podcast because today I think we're going to have a fascinating chat all about periods. We all get them. So let's just dive into, first of all, saying hi to Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited. We're excited to have you on here. So, could you share with my listeners a little bit about you? And, you know, I've shared a little bit about what you do, but I'm sure you could give us a bit more insight into what you do as well.
Yeah, I'm on a mission, basically, on a mission to help as many women and people that bleed to learn about the incredible powers that are held within the menstrual cycle. And my business, the Red Rebel Collective, is really about using this knowledge to rebel against a world that has for a long, long time ignored our cycles and cyclical living. And if you're a Red Rebel, then you're kind of choosing to live in this way. You're choosing to come back to living cyclically and actually prioritizing your menstrual cycle as your inner guide for better wellness, creativity and healing.
Yeah, I love that. And just before we started on this podcast today, I actually did mention something to you that actually I've got my period right now. So it's kind of how in sync am I, guys, to be talking about this? And like, you know, I've got it right now. So I think that's really cool. But also for me, knowing my body more than ever in my 40s now, and I constantly am learning about it. Even now and moving forward, moving back to when I was younger, I have to put my hand up and say to you, Lisa, is I'm definitely one of those women that you can teach me today and my audience about our cycles. I know there's all sorts of different cycles within the cycle and the different phases. I'm embarrassed to say that I've read it, I've studied it, but it goes in one ear and out the other. So yeah, can you help us know more about our bodies today and teach us a bit of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So the way I work is very different to, you've got the biological side of things that, if you went to your GP and asked what the menstrual cycle was, they would explain in that kind of scientific way with the phases, which obviously are definitely important to know about, menstruation being your period week. And then, the first week after you bleed is your follicular phase, going up to ovulation, which is roughly around 2 weeks after your period, sorry. And then we've got the luteal phase, which is usually when the premenstrual time when things get a little bit spicy. And then we come back to menstruation again. But the way that I actually work with people is to look at the cycle through a bit of a different lens. And it's a way of reframing everything that we have known about the cycle and also ourselves, or as I should say, not known. And looking at it with this complete, different, very natural frame. So I don't know if you heard of the idea of the inner seasons, Barbara.
No, I haven't. No.
So I'll take you through that just as a little sort of nugget for today. So essentially, the inner seasons is an amazing concept, and it is something that, once you tune into it and realize you're like, oh Lord, this is insane. I should have known about this before. And it was something that was sort of conceived by my mentor, Alexandra Pope, who is the founder of the Red School, who I trained with when I became a menstruality leader in 2020. And she really, she'd worked with women for decades as a psychotherapist, and she came to discover that there were these phases from working with a lot of women and women's cycles over the years, that the phases of the cycle were actually reflecting, seeing how women were experiencing those cycles and seeing the kind of patterns that were occurring. She realized that there was this very seasonal experience going on that's also quite related to, because a lot of this work is also quite related to like Chinese medicine almost, and restoring balance and looking to nature. So the inner seasons in a nutshell is, if we think about our cycle as 4 different phases, it reflects the 4 seasons of nature, which are more sort of typical in the Northern Hemisphere, I appreciate. But, you know, if we've got the inner spring, that is the week after our period finishes. And then we move into the inner summer, which is ovulation. Then we've got the inner autumn, the premenstrual, and inner winter is our menstruation phase. And I could talk about this a lot, but just to sort of give a rough overview, you know, if we, even having that kind of map within us, you know, if we think about what happens in nature at those times, we can really lean into how to really tend to ourselves during those weeks of our cycle. For example, menstruation in a winter, you know, in nature, not so much in society, because in society we do fill our winters up with events and parties and Christmas and all of that jazz. But in nature, in a winter time, it's a time of retreating, you know, animals go to hibernate, all of the trees, the leaves are bare, everything's happening under the surface, right? All the soil is sort of repatriating. And really that's a sort of prompt for us to really rest as much as we can during menstruation, tend to ourselves, like up the self-care, and really, you know, create this sort of space for ourselves to really be, and less of the kind of out there doing things, socializing, being with people. It's more about actually sort of resting and stopping and letting the soil within us sort of repatriate and reform, you know, and sort of fill up our tank again by resting, because really that's the point when we need to kind of restore our energy and build it back up again. And then, you know, the inner spring is where we're sort of emerging again, like, you know, the new shoots coming up in the plants and new life beginning to form. And that's, you know, typically we can start to feel a bit better after our period, you know, energy wise. We've got a bit more energy coming in. We're starting to think about new things to do, new people to see, new ideas for work, just like that kind of spring feeling. And then ovulation, we are, you know, high energy. It's the inner summer, just like the, you know, the actual summer. We're kind of feel really good in our skin. It's like we're out doing our thing, we're partying, we're socializing, we're like hosting people, we're giving everything to our work. It's like real sort of superwoman, badass feeling.
Feel really, really good, like really sexy and really like, oh, I feel really good today.
Yeah, it's that we're in our summer, right? Like summer can feel like that when we're just out and everything feels amazing. And yeah. And then we turn to the inner autumn, and autumn is a time for transitioning and letting go. Just as, you know, in nature, it's about the change of the, you know, the colors change, the weather starts to change, the leaves start to drop, and it's that experience where we really need to let go of all that bursts of energy that we had the week before, and also let go emotionally. And this is why a lot of people can struggle with this phase, because it, you know, we don't really want to face all of that inner stuff, but it can really push through at that point, and we can get triggered by other people, situations, and yeah, it can be really, really tough for a lot of people. So really that idea of seeing it as a transition phase in order to let go, in order to then have your winter and have your menstruation, can really help. Because, you know, if we think about the seasons of nature, you can't get from summer to winter like quickly. Something has to change, and it has to go gradually through those months. And, you know, if we think about that in our own lives, like that feeling of ovulation, when you are just going, and you're just kind of firing off on all cylinders and feeling amazing, to go from that space to then having that real sort of internal more sort of introverted and sort of tending like to yourself and being with yourself, like it's just not going to happen. And our world is not set up like this, Barbara. Like this is something that's like very much known within us. It's like deep knowledge and deep medicine within us as women, but we've never been shown this. And the world that we live in and have been operating in for so many years doesn't want us to live like this, because it doesn't, make money if we stop and we rest in those sort of 2 weeks, or even just a few days in those last 2 weeks of the cycle. The world wants us to be in that spring, summer where it's just go, 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 do everything, do all the things. Things like social media, even like the way that everything is so always on, and there's no, the idea of resting is like seen as a negative thing in our society. And I really believe that is what's causing a lot of the problems with women, and we're kind of carrying all of this in our bodies, and that's where menstrual issues can kind of spring up.
Yeah, something I've noticed too is having my private practice and counselling. This question comes up a lot with my clients as I'm talking about, and as they're getting to know them, and I watch their body language, and as they're sharing what's going on in their lives. A lot of the time I always say to them, especially if it's been a really rough week or 2 weeks, I always say to them, hey, look, I know a bit of a weird question I'm going to ask you, but do you track your period? And where are you at the moment? And you should see the look I get is a bit like, wow, I'm here for counseling. Why are you asking me about my period? So it's something that I've really nurtured that with my clients, because I can see it in them. And then most of the time the response I get is, no, I don't. I track it here or there. I've got an app. I use it sometimes, and then it's like, oh, no, it's not my period. It's just my husband's really annoying me, or work's really full on, or and what I find from my perspective, what I do is I can see it, how it affects the brain and how it affects the mindset and how it affects our really negative self-talk, which we all have. And I find that because ovulation is so great and you have a couple of weeks of feeling like shit hot or really great, and then all of a sudden someone will just breathe down your neck and you'll want to snap at them, to then having a sore back or sore boobs or whatever. It is, if it's not monitored and your body isn't balanced and you're not where you should be, it can be a roller coaster and it can be really tough. So that's something that I bring up in my practice. But also something too is our bodies are constantly changing. So that's another thing as women we've got to kind of get our heads around. So it's the same with the seasons. And just because if someone's listening to this today and they learn a lot of stuff and they're like, cool, I'm going to track my period, I'm going to nail it, doesn't mean that next cycle or in 5 years' time it's still going to be the same. So that's kind of a little bit rough. But something I would really like to open this discussion with you today, which I'm really passionate about. And there's a bit of shame on my end too, because I know our bodies can, I want to talk about it. So there's no embarrassment from my part that I feel like I don't want to share my cycle and my period story, because I know I'm very blessed and very lucky that I haven't had to go through what a lot of women have had to go through. Again, it may change tomorrow. I'm very wary. I'm very open to that. But what I want to say is, from someone that's in their 40s who hasn't had children, our cycles, I know a lot of my girlfriends have kids and their cycles change. But for me, yes, my cycles changed a lot from when I first got it to my 20s to my 30s and now my 40s. But a lot of it definitely changed from when I got off the contraceptive pill. And I want to open this discussion with you now about having children, not having children, how it affects our periods, but also the pain and our moods. I would love to open a conversation with you today that stuff isn't normal. You shouldn't really have any pain. No, actually, let me be very careful with what I say here. No pain, no moods, which I'm lucky I don't have, but I know in my 20s, holy heck, like I would rip someone's head off and I can see the difference. But let's talk about it. So I'd love to hear from your point of view, you work with women all the time. This is what you do. Am I saying anything that resonates with you here? Am I close? What kind of discussion should we have today about this?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, amazing that you are already asking your clients about their cycles, because that is something that's, I mean, this whole sort of unlearning, for want of a better term, of our sort of perceptions of ourselves as women, and kind of learning this stuff. It's really, it's really radical and it's really revolutionary, because as I was saying, like the sort of society that we live in doesn't want us to do this, and it's also like a very much a throwback of patriarchy, and the fact that women's cycles have been suppressed in this way. It's a different conversation, but it kind of goes back to, like, the witch hunts and that kind of thing, and the women's that were gathering in like ancient red tents and sharing this knowledge was very much kind of taken away, as in the same vein that the healers and all of that, they were the witches that were kind of suppressed at that time. So amazing that you are asking people about this, because it is so, and you're so right, like it does affect things. And the thing is, it's not about saying that or thinking that, like, oh, it's my period, therefore none of that stuff is real, or that we kind of then kind of let go of what's happening. It's the real brilliance of this, and the real sort of benefit of this, is that you can use your cycle and the different phases, for example, like to look into what's going on with you and how you really feel. Like the menstrual cycle is now widely considered the 5th vital sign. And even with that, it's like it is our guide into our state of health in so many different aspects. And like you say, it changes all the time, because our situations change, our health changes, our body changes, we're aging. We, like you're saying about having children or not having children, our mental health, who are we caring for in our lives at that time, what work are we doing, what changes are we doing. A really big thing that I've, with my own experience, came to, a big part of it, but it happens, I believe, for everybody to kind of different extents, is if you are in a big change in your life, no matter what that change is, but if it's a period of disruption, such as, moving house, changing jobs, moving country, having a child, even just like starting a new relationship, or even just starting a new creative project, whatever it is, if it's some sort of disruption, then this can very often be reflected in your cycle. And particularly, the more challenging symptoms that are happening in the premenstruum could feel worse for a time, because you are kind of without ground for a while. And that very end of your cycle, where these sort of symptoms can get very strong just before we bleed, it's actually known as a void moment in the cycle, where you are just about to bleed and things are kind of in a bit of a it's like, it's a void. It's like a gap in the process, and you're waiting for this bleed to happen. And that's where things can get really exacerbated and feel so awful for a lot of women. But really, if you're then in a void in your life, and you're in a place where you're not stable and you haven't got like this firm ground within you, then that can be reflected in how you experience your cycle. And that's just one way, I guess, of demonstrating what we're talking about here, that the cycle really is offering you a bit of a mirror to your physical health, your emotional health, even your spiritual health. It really does help you to shine a light on what's really going on.
Yeah, it does. And I think too, a couple of things that I was thinking about too was how often I've just started to do this. So I'm getting older now, but maybe a year ago, every time I get my period, I've tracked my period pretty much, honestly, since the day I got it. So what I used to do, I can't even remember how old I was. I was at intermediate, which is 12, I think. Anyway, when I got it, my family never spoke about it. It was very shameful. I cried when I got it because I was so embarrassed. And from that moment, I had no one telling me, no education, no information, but it was so interesting. Actually, I just had a flashback. Anyone that knows me, I've always had a paper diary. To this day, I still have a paper diary for my business. When I
Love it.
was 12, 13, I used to draw a little flower. I don't know why I was a flower. I just had this flashback. So every time on day one of my period, I would draw just the top part of a flower. And from that moment, I promise you, hand on heart, I have tracked my period since the day I got it.
Wow, I absolutely love that.
Just the flashback of it. It was like, and that was, I just did it and I always counted the days. And then obviously when I became sexually active and then went on the pill, I would still track it. Doesn't matter if I was on the pill, I'd still have my little flower in the diary and I would still look at it. And then when my doctor would ask me, I'd have my diary and she'd be like, especially back then, look at me like I've got two heads. Oh, how's your period? Hang on, I can tell you. What do you want to know? She used to be like, you are so weird, Barbara. So I always kept track of it and always, made sure I got it all the time. It's, and what I said, I've just started to, every month now when I get it, I say thank you. And it's something that I've just recently started to do because there was a moment in my life when I was training a lot and I lost it for about 2 or 3 months and I celebrated it. I feel a bit ashamed, but I'm just going to be honest because I'm sure there's other women out there that, it's annoying sometimes and it's still, I find it still, but even though it's my body and I love my body, I'm not shitting on myself, but I still find it a bit gaggy and stuff sometimes. I'm not great with things like that. But now in the last year, I did it without even realizing because I'm doing all this work on my continual work on myself. And I was like, thank you. And I was like, what? I went, actually, no. So many years, I hate our periods and they're so annoying. It's like, no, because it's showing me that all my bits, I'm getting older. All my bits are still working. So every time I just got goosebumps. Every time I get my period now, I keep getting goosebumps. Every time I get my period now, I'm like, thank you. All my bits are working. 2 thumbs up. I'm good. Now, I tell you what, there's not many teenage girls, I reckon, and 20-year-olds that go, thank you, I've got my period. So let's change that. Let's change in that when you get your period, it means everything's working, everything's great. And if there's clots, if there's pain, if there's moods, if there's skin breakout, these are signs that our body, again, is trying to tell us something. Keep an idea of what foods you're eating, because I noticed that, lately in the last 6 weeks, I haven't been eating great due to grief in my life. So I've been eating a lot more processed food than I normally do. But I know in the past, when I do eat more processed food, I get a bit of pain. Or, your period changes because it's inflammatory food. So when your body's inflamed, when you're stressed, when you do that kind of stuff, you probably will experience period pain. It could be in the front, it could be when you ovulate, it could be in your back. But note those things down. I think that's the best thing that I could, say is start tracking it, whatever works for you. If it's an app, if it's not, draw a little symbol in your diary, put something in your phone. If you've got young daughters or girls, maybe start educating them that it's not just about the period. And also what I learned too, it was actually on a menopause training thing I did last year. I'm going to balls this up, but I'm just going to try and get it right. A lecturer there said, for me, I thought getting your period was when you bled. But when you get the time to celebrate your period is when you ovulate. Is that right?
Yeah, well, ovulation is I guess, the big event of the cycle because ovulation is also the key to health as well.
Right.
So if you're not ovulating, then there might be something going on there too. Yeah, and I think ovulation has kind of also been overlooked as, well, obviously it's a big fertility moment, so it's kind of always been seen as that, but obviously it is also very key to, your general health as well.
Yeah, and if you're someone like me that had is on the pill or had been on the pill for a very long time. God, I don't know now. I probably should have thought about it before jumping on here. But I was on the pill for like over 10, 12, I don't know, long time. But obviously I didn't ovulate on there. And so when I came off the pill and started to ovulate, I was like, oh, what is this stuff? It was like, now I know what it is. But it's such an interesting thing when you don't know what it's like, the snail trail, or sometimes it's like, what would you describe it like? And if no one wants to listen to this, but this is why we're talking about it today, because people don't talk about it. But it's like, I've got my fingers together. It's like white and gooey, like sticky, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know this is going to be really gross, but I actually, this is going to be really gross. Do I share this? Do I not? Yep, I'm going to share it.
Go for it.
This is why I do this, because people always say to me, I love it because I listen to your podcast because you say things that I would never say out loud. I actually, because I have kind of two different forms of ovulation. Like I have one it's major, it's a lot. And that's my body. As one's like a massive, like clear snail trail, like there's heaps, like snail trail. And then sometimes it's like white and gooey, but I actually like to pick it the white gooey stuff. I'm like fascinated, so I look at it and touch it and like look at it and go, whoa, this is kind of cool, like, you know. Yeah, I know that I wash my hair but it's out of my body. Yeah, I look at it and I'm fascinated by it, and I definitely know when
our body.
Yeah, but let's normalize it. Like a lot of women will be disgusted that I just, I'm thinking, do I just cut this out? But I'm not going to cut it out. But that's the thing, is we censor ourselves. We don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing. Still now, it's embarrassing to talk about it. Why?
This stuff is so deep, and from everything from the actual bodily function and the actual period blood, and partly, it all comes down to how we were introduced to this stuff, which very often is, by parents or by school. And there's so much shame around menstruation and ovulation and women's bodies and how they work. And it's so deep, it's kind of like ancestral, and it's built into our bodies, this shame. So there's a lot of work to try and uncover that and kind of be free of that. And, within our own experiences, and then whether we have children or not, but just the youth that are in our lives, nieces and nephews and everybody that's young, like, it starts with them now. And I have started to work with more young people actually as well, because I really feel that it's, with clients I work with one-to-one, it's about kind of almost going back and, learning it and being amazed by it and seeing it as this whole new adventure of you with your cycle and learning all of these amazing powers and benefits to it. But there's also, the other half of it is like taking people when they're just about to experience all of this stuff and giving them a more positive outlook. And I really feel that, like, God, my sex education at school was just pitiful, and I really feel like, you might have had a different experience, but I think on the whole,
I had no sex education at school. It was just period. Boys went in one room, girls were in the other. I don't know what boys talked about. I actually don't know what boys talked about, but we talked about periods. I slipped through the system going to a different middle school to a high school and then to another high school. I didn't get a sex talk at all.
Exactly right. It's like it's either ignored or just shamed, or like even the fact that it's so separated. Like,
it may not be now. Like, this is this is 30 years ago.
I think it is quite a lot still. Yeah, I think it is quite a lot still. It depends, but yeah. And I just think that the way a lot of children are introduced to it is very much by the biology, which obviously is important, but they get so overloaded with all of the kind of more it's just quite intense, right? They just suddenly get told, right, this is what you're going to happen to your body, and it's going to be this color, and it's going to like look like this, and it's just so intense for them to listen to. And I feel like it's all just focused on the bodily function, which obviously we all need, it's good to know about that. But there's nothing else, and it's not about like, this is how it might affect your mental health or your moods, or, you know, this is actually a really amazing initiation into being a woman. And, you know, partly about celebrating that. And, you know, this is a big journey that you're going to go on. And actually, like, you're going to be, as a menstruator, you're going to be, you know, different to, you know, your father or whatever. And it's going to be this journey that you're going to go on where you're experiencing these cyclical changes. And, you know, there's like ways to do it where it feels more celebratory than shameful. And I think that's where it kind of starts. But there's a lot of, it's deep.
Yeah, and look, I felt shame. And that's why I went to say it, and I held myself back, and I pushed through and thought, no, because if someone's listening to this, if someone's got a daughter, if I had a daughter or a woman at any age, and, you know, the more we talk about it, I know there's other people on podcasts, I'm sure, that would say worse than what I just said. So, but yeah, just education and talking about it and not having that shame, but also knowing what is, I just can't believe it. I hear a woman's story sometimes of the amount of clots that they experience or pain they experience. I'm not talking about anything being diagnosed here, guys, with endo or anything like that. I'm just talking like a period where, you know, there is pain, we get headaches, there is clots, and oh God, it's just my period. And I really want to say, don't dismiss it. It isn't just your period, like the clots and stuff is not okay. There is something going on. But also when people do reach out for help, this is why I wanted them to know about you, is because when they do reach out for help, what they do is, depending on the help they get, they'll go to someone like a GP, and then the GP will prescribe them some form of contraception to stop the heavy flow, to stop the pain, to stop the acne, to stop. And what it is, it's a plaster. And we've all been brought up with the narrative in our head that periods are painful, it's just my period, moody, that's my period, back pain, that's my period. Like, we don't know what's normal when we go to the GP and we trust them and they give us stuff. We don't realize that that's just going to not help our fertility when we get old. Like, it's so multi-layered. I don't want to get too complicated today because this is just the first like intro into periods on my podcast. You know, if people want to know more, we can do another chat. But yeah, like, what's your experience with that about women just experiencing the stuff in the body that they think is normal, and then when they probably like, oh, the pain's too bad, or the flow's too heavy, or the headaches are bad, or my skin's bad, I'll go to the doctor and get help. And then they get help, but it's probably not the best help for them. Yeah.
As you say, I mean, I was obviously on an individual case by case, but, you know, is that very much that, and things are starting to change a little bit, but it's still a long way to go, but with the GP aspect of it. But, you know, it's very much like you say, like a bit of a plaster. And obviously, you know, some things can help to lessen symptoms, but, you know, things like the pill, which are actually suppressing, I mean, all the things that I talk about, like these natural ebbs and flows that you have, these kind of, you know, we call them like powers of each season and the cycle and all of that. It's all suppressed by the hormone contraceptions and the hormonal contraception. You know, you as your natural state without these, this is where all of this stuff gets activated. So even that, like, you know, not saying it's intentional, but it's that kind of just suppressing it, just suppressing the experience. And, you know, how outdated is the pill in terms of, you know, they bring out new pills and stuff, and it's been going for so long, but the amount of women that are suffering and have had negative side effects and negative mental health aspects from the pill, and the fact that it's not really ever been, you know, looked into of that aspect and thought, well, we can't give them this because they get horrendous depression and anxiety. Like, and again, yeah, that's another conversation, but, you know, there's that aspect too. And I really feel that, again, it's about knowing that these things can be signals, I guess, to your health, and that actually, yeah, sometimes with our medical systems, Western medical systems, it's kind of about just treating the symptoms there and then, not really going any further. I mean, I had PMDD for years, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is severe PMS, essentially. Um,
A bit more about that, because so what is it? PMDD?
PMDD, yeah. So PMDD is, for anyone that isn't aware of it, so it's commonly defined as an endocrine disorder. So sort of a sensitivity to hormones, particularly those fluctuations, and but as well as sort of physical symptoms, people can experience a range of mental health symptoms such as depression, anxiety, even suicidal feelings. Some people might experience the symptoms like for a few days. Some people get it for the whole 2 weeks of their luteal phase, and just after ovulation, and even sometimes. Most people would say that their symptoms, as soon as they bleed, would disappear. But some people even get a bit of a struggle as it kind of crosses over into their bleed. And, for me, I spent years, this was when I was 25, and I, went to the doctor, explained about it, and was given antidepressants, which I was on for about 8 years or so. And I'm not anti-medication at all, which I always say, because they really helped me. And I really think, that is definitely, it's a real amazing progressive thing that we have in society that can really help people. But the thing was, and this kind of touches on what we were just saying, is that it just never, the thing that never sat right with me was that I would go for my reviews every 3 to 6 months. And it was very much, a 5-minute consultation of, how are you getting on? Are you feeling okay? Okay, keep taking them and then see you again. And it was like, okay, but I'm 25. I'm presumably going to be having period for quite a long time. Is this it until I have a menopause, or like what? And there was not even a recognition of that or an acknowledgement of that. There wasn't even a question. My questions were always unanswered. And that was the thing that used to get to me. It was like, it doesn't feel like anyone's looking into this or like really going beneath the surface. And I feel like that is the case with a lot of, women's health. That things are kind of just, not really not digging deep into it. And that was one of the, it was kind of always there. And then when I eventually decided to come off and sort of see how the land lay, that's when I started looking for alternatives and natural alternatives. And that's when I came across the Red School and Alexandra Pope, my mentor. And that was the game changer and what completely changed my whole outlook. And that's when I learned all of this menstruality of what I teach now. And it was really that, the book she wrote is an amazing, incredible book that I should always mention, called Wild Power. And in that book, it was the first time somebody had described exactly how I was feeling and really validated it. And it was like, oh, I'm not broken. I'm not wrong. Like, this isn't that something's wrong with me. This is a normal process that I'm having experiences of. Like, at that time when things had got really bad, I was in a void space, like I was saying earlier. It had a big change. So that was why those anxiety feelings were feeling so severe at the end of my cycle. I had no awareness of this. Like, most people don't when I, first sort of teach them this work. And it's like, just having that acknowledgement and that validation that your experience is real and also shared. Like, this is a thing that other women are going through. But again, because of menstrual shame, we're not talking about it and we're not sharing it. And it was this act of, I went deep into this work and did this big, long, training with them. But my healing really came in the process of looking at my whole cycle, because I'd just seen this premenstrual part of me as like this broken bit. Therefore, my whole cycle was broken. But this was the bit that was the where the symptoms were severe. That's where it was broken. But actually, there's so much to it. And it was like how I was spending that week, but also how was I spending the weeks before, and what else was going on in my life. You know, looking at myself like through that kind of, you know, the vital sign, like what's going on with me? How am I spending my time? What are the emotions within me? What stuff is still lingering and what needs to be looked at, you know? And really that process of slowing down as I came into my inner autumn, um, and really upping my self-care during that time. You know, a few other different things, but essentially looking at my cycle as a whole and working with menstruality, really those severe symptoms just disappeared, and it happened quite quickly as well. It was like incredible. So that's kind of why I ended up retraining and being like, I need to tell the world about this because this is absolutely amazing. And
you need to tell the world. Yeah. You do need to tell the world about it, because just listening to that is, you know, for years you were doing it one way and you realized, okay, this isn't, so you listen to yourself, this isn't working for me. I'm going to go look at some other avenues. And then when you looked at it holistically and looked at all the avenues about your body, about your spiritual, about your mental health, about what you were doing, it all kind of came together, and, you know, look what happened. And now you help other women through that, which is, honestly, thank you. It's such a beautiful gift to have someone like you, because that's how it happens sometimes, is you've gone through it and then you found, I guess it's a bit corny to say, but you found the light and found the way of not having to live that life anymore. Because imagine having to, some women do live that till menopause.
Yeah. And of course, menopause is no easy feat for most women. You know, for a lot of women, menopause is a real challenge. And this is also why learning all of this work now, you know, or if you're in perimenopause or menopause, you can still obviously learn it. But the earlier you come to this work, the better and smoother sail your menopause is likely to be, because again, menopause is a thing that has been, you know, cast aside as like, oh, that's where women just go a bit crazy, so we'll just like not talk about it. And, you know, it's all part of the same thing of like, this is our cycle. And menopause is actually like a real, not to, you know, sort of lessen the severity of the experience of it, because it, you know, as I say, is a real challenge and it can be annihilating for some women. But there's also an opportunity there, and it can actually be you know, it's a huge transition for us. But the transition, if it's given the right holding and the kind of correct, you know, level of dignity and support, can actually be a real opportunity for growth, you know, personal growth. And we kind of come out of it into, you know, a new sort of territory where we actually are very much older and wiser. And, you know, it's that kind of age of the wise crone element of postmenopausal women who are incredible. And they're the women that we should all be listening to, because, you know, the wisdom that is there with postmenopausal women is so incredible. And again, that in society has been very much overlooked.
But it also shouldn't rock your world as much as I think it used to. Now there's a lot of more people that you can reach out to. There's this whole thing that's come around perimenopause, which people didn't even know about, and they didn't even know that obviously it means peri, which is before, that can last up to 10 years before you go into menopause. And it's just educating people to listen to your body, and what works for me may not work for you, not may work for you. And that leads me into one of the final questions I've got here for you is, it's the best question to ask a period coach, really, is when we look at our period health, you know, we've touched on it today a little bit, but when we talk about our period health in general, and I know there's many different ages of women that listen to my podcast, they're at different stages of their life. What are some tips or something that you could give my listeners today on how they can improve their period health or help them to understand their period health a little bit better?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, we have touched on it a little bit, but I would definitely say the number one thing to do is to start tracking your cycle. And by that, it's, obviously there's apps that can show you where your period is. And some apps even now you can track like symptoms and, it even has moods and stuff. But I've actually always found them quite limiting, because I think someone telling you like, do you feel tired or hungry, or I don't know, it's very
You have to tick a
prescriptive.
box. You have to.
Yeah,
it's almost like, if I don't feel any of these,
that's
then
it. You don't have any of the emotions.
Yeah. So what I do is just write it in my diary. So if I've got sore back, sore boobs, broken skin, funny tummy,
Amazing.
anything I can think of, I pop it down with a date.
That's it. I mean, I even do mine now on my phone because I have a toddler and I don't always have time to write in a journal, which I used to love doing. But now I just do it on notes on my phone. And the thing is, it takes literally a couple of minutes. But the key with it is to, write down your moods. Like you say, you write down any of your physical symptoms, write down anything that's happened in your day that potentially triggered you in some way. Did you have a bit of an argument with someone, or did you feel a bit rubbish after something happened? Or and also the good stuff. What made you feel great? What self-care did you do? What did you go to a party and like chat to loads of people? And all of that stuff is really important too, because that's also part of your kind of ebbs and flows and your patterns. The most important thing with tracking is to stick with it and to make it as easy as possible. So as I say, like by doing it in your phone or something like that, where it's just easy, only spend a couple of minutes on it. Don't like have the best, with all the best will and intention, having, spending the first 5 days and writing reams of stuff how you feel. It's not sustainable. I'll give it off. So just keeping it short and sweet and just noting these things down is so key. And I guess in your head, have the idea of committing to 3 months. Just think, I'm only going to do it for 3 months. And hopefully by 3 months, you'll be so addicted to it. But 3 months is a good amount of time, because you'll then have roughly 3 cycles, and you'll start to see that there's like some patterns going on with how you feel. Obviously I'd love you to commit to life and carry on and carry on and carry on. But even within 3 months, you can just see that there's stuff going on. And it's amazing what you can discover. I actually have a period repair kit that you could probably, reference in the show notes or something. That
sure, yeah.
It's a free download, and it kind of introduces you to that and gives you the map of the inner seasons and all that kind of jazz. So that would be quite a good little starting point. And the other thing I would say, the other big tip really is to, whatever your experience is of menstruation at the moment, if you can find a way to begin to honor it. So by that I mean, how can you try and incorporate more rest into your menstruation days? What can you start to say no to? How can you give yourself a bit more self-care during that time? It's really the most tender point in our cycle, where we need the most love, where we need the most rest and nurture. And just think of it as like the 1%, right? How can I next cycle give myself 1% more of that? Would be a really great place to start as well.
Oh, I think everyone's going to love those tips. And also something that I just thought of randomly, I'm just going to ask this question. I don't know. So we talk about period health too. Now there's like this kind of, what would I say, introduction to like the cups and the period undies. And now people are talking about tampons aren't very good and it's just best to wear a pad. Like, as a period coach, I don't know if that comes up in any of your training or anything, can that affect, the flow of the period? Like, what are your thoughts on just how to take care of our period when we've got it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, with regards to the products and stuff, then, organic is always going to be way better if it comes to things like pads and tampons. I use reusables. I think they're amazing. Like a menstrual cup I use, and I use reusable pads as well sometimes, and period pants.
Cool. See, I'm glad I'm having this. I'm glad my community having this conversation.
So with cups, like you should be aware that there are quite a range. So if one doesn't fit you, or it feels weird, or it feels like it's coming out, then there's quite a few different fits. This is the problem with cups, right? Is that you can't really like try them, and they cost a bit. Obviously, they cost more money than like tampons would, but overall, they're going to save you loads of money because you're only buying it once. But I would say with cups, if you really want to stick with them, you like it, but you just got the wrong fit, always look, because sometimes you might need a wider fit or a shorter cup, like it all changes. And yeah, I found them to be really good. Some people are just very individual with this. But with things like, thinking organic with tampons and things, it's like when we think about any physical symptoms that we might have, like there's so many kind of toxins in our environment, from everything from, like products that we use on our skin to diet, everything like that needs kind of looking at. So if you are experiencing something negative physically, then trying to go as organic as possible, if budget allows, would definitely be a good idea. And also the other reason why I love reusables is that it's, menstrual cups, like they are, you're dealing with your blood more. You are like,
I was about to ask that. So when they come out, do you obviously have to tip it out?
Yeah. So it's more hands-on, shall we say. And it's kind of something you get used to, but it's amazing. Like, again, this is going to sound like, oh my God, what? She's like,
well, I talked about my ovulation, so now I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can talk about looking at your blood in your. Are they called Diva cups? Is that what they're called, or is that a brand? It might be a brand.
That might be a brand. The first one was the Moon Cup. The Moon Cup. Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. I find like you can see like really cool patterns in it and stuff. Like I don't know, and it's kind of like it goes into that menstrual shame story of like, this is part of me and it happens. And it also, from my perspective, it's this incredible part of you that's this life force, and it's got all this amazing, stuff that we can access from it. But even if you're not at that level, it's like, this is part of us, and it's not dirty and it's not shameful, and by actually interacting with it more and seeing it, it's like going to normalize that within us. So actually engaging with it in that way kind of also helps to shift that shame if you are up for it.
Well, yeah, up for it. But also I think it's important to look at what comes out of your body. So, any nutritionist or dietitian or whatever, or health professional, if someone's having complications, what colors you wee, how often do you wee, what's your poo look like, all that kind of stuff. So why can't we have the conversation of, what does your blood look like? Does it have clots? What color red is it? How much do you bleed? Like, let's open that discussion up, and next time someone gets their period, have a look at it. And yes, I'm very much like, ugh, but also I know at the same time, I ick myself. It is mine, but I do look at it, and I'm very wary of if anything changes. And you know what I mean? So even though someone listening to this, I want to normalize that too. Yes, it's my body. Like I said in the beginning, I love it, but I'm a little bit, but I go past that and go, okay, everything looks pretty good, great, and you're just that next step up, which is beautiful. Let's talk more about it, that you actually do that. Because if I had a daughter and I'd like her to use a cup and look at it and, Mum, look at my blood, like, this is great, this is normal. It's, how awesome would that be if we lived in a life like that our young girls were just like, yep, I got it, I've got no shame, I know how to care. I know how to care for myself, I know how to clean properly, I've got all these different tools I can use when I feel good for my body.
100%. And like, it's again, it's that normalizing, so that maybe when young girls, experience it for the first time, it isn't actually that much of a shock. Like, it's always going to be a little bit of a shock because it is blood coming out of your
it's very scary.
Yeah, but if you're already like used to seeing your mums, or like, even if you don't see it, but she's talked about the fact that she feels different times of the month because of it, like, Do you know what I mean? It kind of all builds to this picture of like, oh, it's not this really, really terrible thing. You know.
I remember, I don't know about you, but I remember being in a household of every time it did happen, I'd hear a noise of, oh no. But then also my mum was on the injection for a really long time. So I lived in a household with someone that never got their period, and we never spoke
Yeah.
about it. And to the point of in my teenage years, I just remember this too, isn't it? This is a little walk down memory lane for me today. I just remembered, and I think people could be a bit taken back by this. I had to buy my own sanitary products because my mum wouldn't buy the ones that I wanted, like the fancier packs. I played a lot of sport. So I would get the fancier ones. Yeah. And I didn't start using tampons till my 20s because I had no one to show me or no one to talk about it till one day one of my friend's older sisters, I was playing a lot of netball, and she looked at me and she goes, don't you use it? I must have got something out of my bag. And she was like, don't you use a tampon? And I was like, she's like, oh, let me show you, let me tell you, you know? And she had to have the discussion. That was when I was 20. So, but I had to buy my own, sanitary products because that's how much my mum was like, or I don't use, that's it. That's what she used to say. Or I don't use them, so you have to buy them yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
So let's
Says a lot. These small things, like, but there's a lot that kind of says collectively.
yeah. So let's break this kind of let's have these discussions with everyone around us, and and even have the conversation. Beautiful. Beautiful Awareness Day. Thank you for bringing that up about the organic. Like, if you are suffering period pain, like, look, I know there's so many reasons why, but if you're feeling a little bit off, just changing your sanitary products and again, noting it down so you know when you started, and changing from tampons to pads or to the period underwear or to the cup or whatever, and just seeing if that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did read somewhere, I don't know, sorry, I can't remember the source of it. I felt like I read somewhere or heard on a podcast or something recently that someone was saying that the reason why women are going back to the old-fashioned ways, as in not really having like having period undies or pads, is apparently if the flow can come out, like the flow comes out better, or you get rid of it more rather than being blocked up by a tampon. Is there any truth to that?
I've never heard that, but it kind of makes sense in a way, like free flowing is free flowing, right? I always found, I remember even as a child, I used to find tampons weird. I'm like, what is this? Do you know what I mean? Like a plug?
Totally.
Like, is this all that's been invented by now? We're in like the 1990s and it was then. It was just like, are you actually kidding me? I have to put that on me? Like, what?
Yeah, and just the whole complication of where does it go and how does it stay in, and
Yeah. And the
so many
thing hurts. Proper tube.
I've had conversations with women throughout the years. I've known women that have forgotten that they've had a tampon in there, have left it in for weeks, and then gone to the doctors, and the doctor's like, wow, that's a bad smell. And they're like, yeah, I must have BV or I must have an infection. And the doctor's like, no, you've just got a tampon up there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It happens all the time. It's so normal. Or a tampon getting stuck in this, like there's so many, we've all known someone, or we've all got a story about a tampon. So yeah.
So how many people have, hidden a tampon up their sleeve when they've been at work or somewhere social and hidden it, And like when you were, or when you were younger, if you're using sanitary towels and it was like opening it really slowly so no one could hear you, like crinkle in the toilet. And that's in the toilet, which is with other women. Like there's so many levels to this.
Yeah, I remember being in a cubicle and you'd hear mainly in a public toilet, and you hear the rustle and you go, oh, yuck, she's got her period. I mean, that's what I mean. It's so ingrained into us. But I went to an all-girls school, so you'd hear, has anyone got a tampon? Like being at an all-girls school, at high school is very very open. So
Yeah.
you get a different view again of periods. But yeah, so as I ask all of my guests, the final question I always ask them is, have you got one golden nugget or one kind of hot tip, or I don't know, something that you want to share? I mean, hot tip in periods, but oh well, I'm just going to go with it. Something that you want to share with my listeners today about, about what you do or periods or anything that we've spoken about today?
I guess just like to reinforce that your cycle is your source of empowerment. And whether your experience is a negative one right now, because I'm very aware that, people suffering are going to be thinking, how can this possibly be a source of empowerment? But I guess if you take anything away, it's really being aware of the fact that your cycle can show you the truth of how you're feeling, whether that is a positive feeling, whether it is a negative feeling. And, for far too long, we've been turned off to this inner knowledge within ourselves. And our periods have just been places of this pain and distress, or just disregard and complete ignorance and suppression, of which we've kind of talked about. And really, coming into relationship with our cycle in this way is an act of rebellion. And I always like people to feel inspired by that and kind of take it as empowering, that actually this is really rebellious for me to actually engage with my cycle in this way, because really awareness is power.
Yeah, couldn't say. Yeah, 100% awareness is power. Yes. So if anyone is listening to this and they would like to have a period coach or know more about what you do, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so you can hook up with me on Instagram. I'm at the Red Rebel Collective. I also run some weekly events every week on a Wednesday. So, you'll see the links for that in my Instagram. So maybe Instagram is the best thing to say for now. But yeah, do reach out to me. And yeah, I coach women one-to-one. I do group coaches. As I say, we've got the free events every week. I've got a buzzing little Facebook community. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on with my page. So yeah, I'd love to connect further.
Yeah, and that'd be great. And also you mentioned before the period repair kit. So I'll put that up in the show notes for anyone that I guess wants to get a bit of learn more about their period or their cycle and learn how to, I guess if it's called a period repair kit, it's a bit of repairing going on.
Yeah, how to start engaging with all of this work that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, what a beautiful chat today has been. Yeah, it's really good to talk about something that I personally always still feel a bit awkward. I feel a bit awkward about what I've shared today. I feel a bit awkward talking about the whole thing. And I'm a grown woman. And I'm not embarrassed about many things, let me tell you. So this is good because I want to normalize it and I want more women to really honor their bodies and know what is okay for them and what is not okay for them, and not to brush past their intuition and that, oh, I'm just being stupid or I'm being silly. Really want to bring that to the surface. So I just want to thank you so much, Lisa, for taking your time today to share a bit of insight about the beautiful work you do and helping my listeners understand their bodies a little bit more.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to come on and chat to you today.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and it has inspired you on your self-care journey. Please feel free to share this with a friend and subscribe over on Apple Podcast. I really love hearing your feedback. So guys, please feel free to write a review on Apple and let me know which part of this episode resonated with you the most. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about Self-Care Studio or the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, self_care_studio, or on my website, selfcarebybarbaraThompson.com.au. really look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Look after you. And I'll catch you soon. Bye.